I guess if we don't, I just might have one for you, Casper.
Mhm.
You kind of touch upon, okay, the different sectors where data space apply, of course, but in the context of deploy EMDS, the focus is really on data of mobility of passengers.
Yeah.
And to link also with the presentation of Dries, could you tell us how you envision potentially the integration of logistic data into mobility data space?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think, well, maybe first of all, EMDS is a bit more than just passenger data, but it is focused definitely on urban mobility data. So, for example, in Flanders, we are really dealing with counting data of different transport modes, not just buses and public transport. But still, I think the question is very valid. And in EMDS, indeed, we focus on mobility, but we have indeed quite, I mean, I would call them lighthouse projects like Disco that really want to bring the data space concepts also to the logistics sphere and especially urban logistics. I think particularly the EDIC, the European Digital Infrastructure Consortium, will really look at, okay, how not only can we make initiatives such as Deploy EMDS and DISCO more sustainable in the long term, but also on how can we combine efforts that have happened in the logistics sphere, not only urban logistics, but also port logistics and so on, and the efforts that have happened in urban mobility. How can we combine those together with, for example, other efforts that are being done in CITS or in and so on? How can we combine that into more long-lasting data space or data infrastructures so that, yeah, indeed, different initiatives in logistics, in mobility can also strengthen each other. The more kind of data products that are available in a data space and the bigger your ecosystem is, the more added value there is and the more potential there is to really, yeah, combine, how to say, yeah, to just have a successful end product as a data space, essentially.
Maybe to add to
Yeah.
that, across a lot of sectors, you're going to have a lot of data sets that are just relevant for multiple use cases.
Yep.
Like traffic information is both relevant for urban, for mobility and logistics. So this whole technology of data spaces is still maturing and developing. So it's not yet decided what direction it's going to go in. But at IMEC, we do believe that you have one internet. You're also going to have one data space eventually. And all the different data space initiatives need to be able to connect and cooperate with each other. And like Casper has presented, you have a lot of different connector types that are in development now. Eventually, all those different connector types can still be valid, but need to be able to interoperate with each other. So we, in the projects of IMEC, we always are working towards a technological solution where you have a common framework across the different solutions, different architectures, which allows these collaborations and data sharing across different data space domains. And in that sense, you get this data space, which consists of networks. You'll have a network that is, for example, a specific city, and within that city, you'll have mobility data, logistics data, maybe something from the hospital data, or you can have specific domain networks where on a European level, you'll have a network of all train transport. So you can have communities of different flavor depending on the use cases, but on a larger scale, everything is connected with each other. Like I said, data space technology is still evolving. We don't know if that is how it will eventually end up, but that is the technological vision in IMEC that we are working towards and that we see should be the future.
Thank you very much for this extensive and qualitative answers. Very interesting to see how you anticipate this interconnectivity that is needed. I see we have one more comment in the chat. Maybe I will let you both have a look and reply if you want. And maybe Anne-Charlotte, I will give you the mic now.
Thank you very much. So we have a bit of time left, so we wanted to call all the three speakers back on stage to have some outlook questions. And now we should be able to see also Chiara, exactly. Thank you very much all for giving these different perspectives from the side of the policy framework, but then also some like more concrete solution and how to also have a methodology on maybe how to define to what extent a data space can be the appropriate way forward in a specific case. My question would be, what do you think are the next key steps to be taken in the next 5 to 10 years in order to foster the development of these data spaces? And maybe Chiara, I would say, what are these next steps in terms of policy making? So what you see is key in developing still further there. And then maybe to the colleagues from IMEC, what you see is needs to happen for those solutions that you presented to be further taken up by a larger number of cities, not only the ones that you have been more closely collaborating with. Maybe Chiara, you can start.
Yes, I'm happy to start. So I think the fact is we had quite a significant volume of pieces of legislation adopted in the last mandate. So, but I think it would be a mistake to think that that is all done and the framework is now in place and we can only focus on implementation. That's really where the problems can start sometimes, because as I mentioned, these are very complicated pieces of legislation. This sector moves very, very fast. And so I think monitoring how this will actually work in practice will be really, really important. And one thing that I also briefly mentioned in my presentation is that this is a very multi-layered framework. And so the interplay of the different pieces of legislation and different strategies is also going to be something important to look at. A simplification of the overall framework and the different requirements will be key on this. The aspect of international competitiveness is a bit of a more like crystal ball territory, perhaps, also because we have some important elections coming up. We do not know yet if the US strategy, for instance, is going to change again towards more protectionism. And of course, in the EU, we have a very strong commitment to the protection of personal data, which then means that if other jurisdictions do not offer the same level of safeguard, then the export of data becomes complicated. So there is that. And then there is also an important part, I think, of capacity building, but we can also talk about that later on. I'll just hand over to the IMEC colleagues.
Thank you, Chiara.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. From an architectural point of view, what we notice is often a big bottleneck in projects like these is the governance of a data space. There's a lot of factors in governance. It's not a technical challenge, but a societal challenge. How are we going to collaborate? How are we going to agree on policies and standards? And things like that. So I think what we are focusing a lot on in projects now is creating a governance that enables trusted collaboration between stakeholders, because that's the second part. Like Casper said, a lot of the data and data spaces now is open data, openly available. The business case for open data is much smaller. I think if we want to scale this, we have to look at creating value in commercial applications, which means we have to create a data space where you're going to have commercial companies that collaborate with each other. And collaborating with each other often means sharing data with each other, which means there's a lot of distrust amongst the stakeholders, and a governance is something that can enable that. And then a last one, which is maybe a bit very specific for logistics. In IMEC, the department that I'm in is specifically looking at data spaces for physical internet, so for hyper-connected and automated logistics of the future. In that case, you can make a business case for you're optimizing your logistics processes and you're reducing wastes and inefficiencies. But there, like Casper said, data, if you want to share data, there's a lot of standards that you have to take care of. And sharing data in logistics operations is often a byproduct of sharing processes. I don't care if I'm tracking my cargo, my container. I don't care what your exact location is. I care, is it arrived on time? Will it be delayed? What is the status? So we are now looking at actually enriching the technology of data spaces with an additional layer that not just focuses on data sharing, but process sharing, sharing events. And it is the belief at the moment, we still need to, or it is an assumption, maybe a better word, that sharing events is a much more scalable way of collaborating. And sharing events is something that can help you collaborate on an operational level. Whereas sharing data, you have the data and then you still have to do something with it. So when you're looking at things like collaborating, which means real-time collaboration, there we think that process sharing events might be a next step on top of data spaces. But that's something still speculative. We're investigating that. I think more current day, more practical is the governance challenge.
Okay. Yeah, really interesting. But also it's good to have this outlook on what would be potentially the next steps then, and building on that. Casper, is there something that you would like to add?
Well, I think most of the important things have in fact been said already by Dries and by Chiara. I agree that the majority of the hindrances right now lay either in the governance aspect or in the data standardization aspect. I think there is still a big gap to be filled, especially with regards to standardization. I feel like one of the main advantages that data spaces can have, or one of the main ways that certain use cases of data providers or data services can scale, is if different data sources are being provided in a standardized fashion. That allows to really easily scale certain applications and certain services that are being provided, and that does allow an added value for having a data space where you can do a lot of automated services that way.
All right. There's 5 minutes left. Maybe just to conclude with a final, like if you had to give an advice on one, let's say, kind of skill or competences that you would like to see being further emphasis on in either public authorities or also like the different types of private sectors in the urban and logistic mobility ecosystem, what would those be? Like, Chiara, if you had to choose one or two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would choose necessarily like a skill specifically so much as an attitude or an approach to the problem, because very often with digital technologies, be it data spaces, be it blockchain, be it artificial intelligence, you sometimes see a tendency to kind of follow the buzzword and think that you just need to add a layer of technology to whatever it is that you're trying to do, and that will make things easier. Whereas what we insist at Eurocities is, that's why we call it a people-centered digital transformation, is to always start from the problem and ask yourself, what am I trying to address here? So am I trying to make my traffic flows more efficient? Am I trying to get cars off the road? Or in other areas, am I trying to make my waste management collection better? Am I trying to integrate vulnerable categories of people better into the city life? And so you start from the problem, and then you look at the different tools that can help you. And that should also be the context. Why do I want to deploy a data space, and what am I going to use it for? And so I think if you want to go back to calling it like a skill, I think it's really the attitude to start from the problem and not just go after technology just because that sounds cool and it's sort of like the latest cutting edge type of tool, but always try, what am I trying to achieve here, and how am I going to try to make my city better for its citizens?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe from your side, Dries and Casper, what would be your wish in seeing certain skills or certain capacity building in the ecosystem?
Oh, I think, curiosity and business mindedness, because we get a lot of response from cities that it's not a completed solution yet. The promise of data spaces, which is still in the future with all these different applications, is not yet realized. There are no business models yet for data sharing. There's still a few challenges here and there. So you cannot expect immediately to have the full product ready. Instead, what I would encourage cities, and what we are encouraging cities, is look at it bottom up and see where can you make quick wins and really bring added value. And I think there, having an ecosystem mindset is already very beneficial. And additionally, It's an interesting technology. Europe is pushing it. They're giving a lot of subsidized project for it. Take advantage of these projects to kind of play around with the technology. The highest enthusiasm that we've had from cities are from the technical people, the data analysts, the architects. They are very happy to play around with it and see what opportunity it will bring. So if you're a city and you're not certain, have a talk with someone who is in a data space project and bring in a technical person, because often, especially at this stage, the value lies more in the technical part and not yet in the business or in the political part. And their technical stakeholders will be relevant to kind of highlight the current benefits of data spaces in the cities. Yeah, and just be curious, keep an open mind and play around with it in projects like Disco or EMDS.
All right. Casper, one final word, or shall I make an announcement, or shall we move on to the announcement for the next upcoming Disco webinar?
Maybe super briefly, I think also, like I said before, these bottom-up approaches to build the data space use cases are actually a great way to educate also people with a non-technical background about the advantages of a data space and how they can set it up. So that does help also as a knowledge building exercise worldwide, well, in Europe.
All right. Then really thank you very much to all three of you for all these clear presentations on a subject that is not always that easy to grasp. So I think today we made a great step also in that regard. I see there's questions in this chat about upcoming opportunities to learn further about this. Marion, would you like to give us a bit of a heads up towards future activities that you're organizing?
Sure. For joining you in thanking the speakers for such interesting presentations. And yeah, if you want to dive deeper into the topic, there is this Disco training program webinar that will take place actually next week, as well as the Alice Innovation Summit, where you will find some of these projects have exhibition stands and also some panel discussions around the topic of digitalization of transport. So you are welcome to join both of these events. Yeah, and just thanking all of you for your participations today. I think we had a very interesting hour and a half, and hopefully to more collaboration also between Alice and Eurocities for such webinars.
Yep. Thank you all. And indeed, if you have questions, don't hesitate to keep in touch either with Marion or myself if you want to know how to further work on that, either through Alice or Eurocities. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.